In this video, we're going to be working on Mark's beautiful 1977 Corvette. So I've known Mark for a long time, and it's actually awesome to be working on his car. I've known him probably for at least 10 years. So he brought his car for a couple big jobs and a couple little jobs. Now the big job that he needs is he needs a transmission swap. The other stuff that he needs is just little odds and ends in the interior, but I know that you guys will face these problems on your car. So the first one is going to be his driver's side power window does not work. So I will take you step by step on how to troubleshoot that. Shouldn't be that bad of a fix. The only thing I'm worried about is he said he has replaced his motor 3 times, which to me sounds like may not be the motor that's the issue. So we'll dig into that and we'll get that fixed for him. One of the other issues that he has is you see this window. It's really not that that wobbly. It's not too bad. But if you go to this window, see how wobbly that is? He wants that fixed. So here's a little overview of his car. I'm sorry, Mark, it's a little dirty, but it's a really, really nice car, and it's been taken care of ever since I've known him. He's always wanted the white with the red, and that's what his wife gave him. So super nice car, and what I like about it is that inside is very, very original. I mean, it's got original factory carpet, original door panels and seats and everything, so it looks really, really good. So let's get started on the issues that his car has. To begin this job, we have to remove the door panel. So these door panels are a little bit harder to remove than the later style door panels. So not factory, but for this panel, there's a screw here and here. You have a screw here, you have a screw here. You have to take this lock knob off, and then you have another screw at the top, and then the whole door panel will come off. You'll be able to access underneath. Once you get the door panel off, you're basically going to be focused on, there's a cover right here that covers the window motor. For some reason, this car still has its vapor barrier, even though it is held on by duct tape. So, it's supposed to be held on by glue, but what we'll do is we'll peel off underneath here and kind of just lift up this cover, so that way we can see what we're working with, where we need to be. Right there, that's the cover we need to take off. Pretty simple, and once you're there, we should be ready to test. With the door panel off, we can start testing our motor. So the power window system is real easy. Basically, the way it works is there's a big pink wire under the dash that plugs into the fuse box. That big pink wire runs over into your center console and connects to both of your switches. And so what happens is when you press the switch down, it sends 12 volts into a wire back into the door on the motor. When you press the switch up, it does the opposite. It sends 12 volts to a different wire, which then moves the window up. The first test we're going to do is, well, here's the thing. I know that this window over here works, so I know that the power source from the fuse box to the switches is good. So what we don't know is whether the electrical from the switch to the motor is good, and that's what we're going to test now. So I have my test light attached to the shifter, which is usually the best ground. It always works for me. And so what we're going to do is we're going to unplug the plug, and we're going to turn the key on, and we're going to hold this to one of the connectors. So that is down. And then we're going to go to the other side, press the switch up, and that is up. So the window motor is getting power to it that tells it to do stuff. I can hear it clicking, but that's all I can hear. So it might be another motor that we need to put in. Your best friend for this job is going to be a 3/8 ratcheting wrench. It gets the 3 bolts that hold the motor in very easily. You could probably do it with a regular wrench, you could probably do it with a small ratchet, but this will save you a lot of time. Another tip is once you get this motor loose, it won't want to come out because the gear sticks through the hole in the regulator. So if you loosen up this bolt right here, you can move the regulator out enough that it should pop out. So I'll remove the motor, and then we're going to bench test it and see what's wrong with it. We have the motor out, and you know what? I'm looking at this motor, and it grounds through these 3 spots right here, and you notice there's still paint on those spots. Also, this plate that goes pretty much like this in between that and the regulator is really dirty, which means this regulator, that's probably really dirty too. What I'm going to do before I declare the motor dead is I'm going to put it on the bench and see if I can't get it to work on the bench, and then from there clean it up. And luckily, if Mark is lucky, he might get a fixed window with just cleaning up the motor he already bought. Here's my nifty little power window motor tester. So basically you can do this at home. It's a battery. All you have to do is connect the housing to the negative terminal on a battery, and then I have another cord that I can connect to one of the terminals in the back, like so. Then all I have to do is push this on the positive terminal. So that works. Let's try the other side to go the opposite direction. So that's a good motor. So here's what was happening. Basically, I put my ground on the painted part, and then I put this on the positive, and we don't have a connection. We don't have anything making the motor go. And it's all, this is all the difference right here. There it is. So luckily for Mark, he doesn't have to buy a new motor, and I'm kind of surprised that whoever is the mechanic that was working on this car replaced it 3 times. I mean, yeah, Chinese parts suck, but they don't suck that bad. I don't know. We'll put the same motor back in, and he will have a working power window. I also am going to clean up the contacts inside the regulator, make sure all that stuff is nice and clean, and put it back together. With the motor cleaned up, here's the moment of truth. Works awesome. Here's the transmission that we're going to be putting in Mark's car. So this transmission came out of this car. So this car was wrecked back in 2016, thereabout. It's been sitting a little while. I bought it for parts, and so the transmission is a good transmission. I figured since we had it out of the car, we would seal it up a little bit better. So the first seal that I did was this tail shaft seal, which looking at the old one, it wasn't too bad. I feel like it's been replaced before because it's red, not orange. It will need a new transmission cross member mount, which is normal. Now, most of the leaking that I could see around this trans before I cleaned it up was around the pan gasket, so we are going to do the pan gasket. You can take a look at the front seal right here, which I have replaced. Here's the old one. The lip on the very inside edge is kind of worn down, so there was a little bit of fluid inside here, but not too much. But that is replaced, and then this fluid coming from inside the transmission is decent. It's used, obviously it's a used transmission, so we're not expecting anything new. But looking at the filter we got right here, you know, nothing really bad. So I'm pretty happy with it. Pretty sure it's going to make a good transmission for Mark and save him a whole bunch of money. I can already tell this is going to be a pain in the butt without a lift. So I think after this job, I'll be buying one, because if I can get it that much higher, it's just that much easier to get a transmission out. So let's crawl under the car and see what we have before we get started. I got a light under here, hopefully that'll help. So first observation, the transmission's leaking a whole bunch, which pretty normal. Let's see, yeah, we got leaks in the back, all over the exhaust, leaks in the front, all that kind of stuff. So basically, this is the order from the front to the back that you have to go to. So you have to take off this shield for the flex plate, and then from there you have bolts in the flex plate. You then have a dipstick tube and a kickdown cable and transmission cooler lines to remove. You have the vacuum for the modulator, then the drive shaft. On the other side you have the speedo cable, actually it might be on this side, the shift linkage and all that kind of stuff. So it all has to come out before you can even begin to think about undoing the bolts for the bell housing. But yep, we'll get there one little step at a time. Up top in the engine bay, there are other things you need to disconnect. The first thing you have to worry about is, here's the vacuum source for the transmission. Basically it makes it shift. I disconnected it down at the bottom. Usually that's okay, but you just need to pay attention to that when you're lowering the transmission. It shouldn't be in the way. This dipstick tube usually can be pulled out before you drop the transmission. Just make sure you catch the fluid. Here on the other side, the only thing you need to worry about is this cable right here. So this is the kickdown cable, basically puts you in passing gear when you stomp on it. That needs to come out with the transmission, and so the way you disconnect it is right here in the back. There's two little push pins, and you push it out that way once you get it disconnected. So not too bad. You can also disconnect it from the transmission, but we're going to be reusing this cable, so we're going to do it that way. With everything up top disconnected and pretty much everything down low disconnected, I'm going to show you how we're going to get this sucker out. So I have one floor jack holding up the engine. You don't want to let the engine hang, because the distributor will go back and hit the firewall, and then all the weight will be on the motor mounts. As original as this car is, I'm sure the motor mounts are not original. So I'm sure the motor mounts are original, meaning they might break and the engine could fall down. We don't want that. Another thing I did was I kind of undid the starter and I scooted it forward. That way it's out of the way. So the second floor jack, what this is going to do is it will slowly, hopefully, lower the transmission down. The last thing I need to do is this transmission cross member. There's a bolt here, and there's a bolt that goes crosswise up in the top. Those need to come out, and then I'm hoping the transmission cross member will drop a little bit, and then I'll be able to scoot it back out of the way so the tail shaft will clear. We'll see how well that goes. We might have to undo some exhaust hangers and get the exhaust to hang down just a little bit, but it shouldn't be too bad of a job. We're just gonna have to see how it goes. This is hard work. I want to lift. There it is. It's out. So the only issue I had was when I dropped the transmission down, the tail shaft was pointed downwards and it made a big old mess. But look at this. There's the back of the engine. And the transmission's out. So we'll have a new one to put in. Whew. But not till tomorrow, because I'm done with this one for today. Whew. There's the old transmission. Here's the new transmission. So basically, what I did was I placed it on top of the jack, I rolled it under, and then I used my foot to slowly pump up the transmission in place. It took a while, but it worked. Before I go ahead and connect everything else, what I've done is I've connected all the bell housing bolts. There's two on this side, two on the other side, and then two on the top. Once you get those connected, basically the engine and transmission will act as one unit. And what you can do is you can slide back this jack just a little bit farther on the pan, and then you can lower down the transmission a couple inches. Notice how I haven't moved the cross member back up to meet the motor mount, or to meet the transmission mount. What you can do is you'll have easier access to these ports right here where the transmission cooler lines go. With the transmission all the way up where it needs to be, it really is hard to get any kind of line wrench or anything like that, unless you have like a crow's foot wrench, which I don't. So you can lower down the transmission just a tad in order to get to those lines. The bottom one's easy enough. The top one just needs a little bit more room. So that's where we're at. Now all I have to do is stick crap back together. So we have the starter, we have the transmission cooler lines, we have the kickdown cable which goes up, we have the vacuum modulator tube which goes back down, also the dipstick tube that need to go down, at least on this side. So we have lots of work to do, so we will get at it. Alright, we have the new transmission in, and I'm going to show you on the old transmission what you need to make sure you have all connected before you fire it up. So you need the torque converter, this, inside the transmission obviously, and you need to hook up 3 bolts that go to the flex plate. You have 6 perimeter bell housing bolts that need to be hooked up. Make sure those are hooked up. This kickdown cable that goes up the carburetor needs to be hooked up. The dipstick tube needs to be hooked up. There is 2 cooler lines that need to be tightened, and you have the vacuum shift modulator, which also has a metal line that will go up to the engine. Make sure that's hooked up. Here on the other side, you're going to have a shift cable right here, which will attach to the transmission at that lever. There's also a bracket part of the shift cable that needs to be put in there. You have a transmission speedometer cable right here that screws in. Then you have all the bolts that are going to hold on the yoke to your drive shaft, and then again at the other end of the drive shaft on your differential. With all this stuff hooked up, what you want to do is put in 4 quarts of fluid just straight up. We don't know how much is left, old fluid is left in the torque converter, so what we're going to do, put in 4 quarts, we're going to fire it up, we're going to let it get warm, and then from there we can add until it says full on the dipstick. Alright, so far so good. We have first gear. Alright, stop it. Reverse. That's good. Put on the seatbelt. Come to a stop. One shift. Two shifts. We got all 3 gears. Let's take it out on the highway. I changed my mind. We're going to turn around and check the fluid one more time. Let's do a little U-turn. Alright guys, well that's the end of that video, but I know it was short, but when you're on your back underneath the car, it's really annoying to get up and take video, so sorry about that, but it runs and drives great. But I want to show you guys one more thing before I finish it. So when I started the car up for the first time, put the transmission in, it made a weird like moaning noise. It was weird. It was just like woo the whole time, and I was like, that's so weird. And you know what it ended up being? This hose. So let me show you. So this hose right here was attached to the PCV valve here to the carburetor, and come on guys, you guys know that hose is way too big to cover any kind of PCV. So this was leaking so much air that it got pinched by this and it started making that noise. So I replaced that hose, and then the engine runs 10 times better than it used to. It doesn't shake or stutter like it used to. Mark thought it needed a tune-up, but I'm like, you know what? Maybe it just needed this hose to be replaced. He has a bunch of other vacuum hoses that could probably, they're probably due to be replaced, but that will have to be on the next video. But there it is, one more Corvette back on the road because now it shifts, which is good.